some things I wanted to cover this idea about the MSA. I wanted to cover that multi-time frame lens. Let's see, file new image. That's what I want. And then I wanted to go through my just the daily routine of updating a couple charts and looking at a few swings, so you can see the application of those that multi-time frame lens, because it geared me into the to getting the Dow and Mexico and Brazil at the turning point here in December. And it was the of all the 20% meltdown, this is the end of the world experiences I've had in the last 25 years. You know, listening to people talk and watching the news and making my own judgment. This is the calmest that I've ever been, and it felt like the easiest turning point. And when to get out, how to play it short, how to trim it at the end, how to start incrementing in, how to make that whole move. This was by far the easiest on me psychologically, and it almost felt, it was almost too easy, right? So we had a year that looked like this, it was just uninterrupted climbing to the moon, and then this was an all-time high all across the board, and then this crap happened.
Yeah.
And that's about where we are right now. And so this piece was about So this was a 5% loss. This was a 10% loss to this double bottom, and then everybody thought this was okay. And then this last piece was about 20. Now, in previous generations, from an all-time high, everybody said, hey, 10% sell-off is a correction. Right? This is where it became a correction. Everything less than 10 was, everybody said, hey, that's just market noise. And then the actual definition of a bear market was like 20%. And that's still what's being pushed in the popular press. But a couple things have happened in the last 20 years that convinces me that the movers and shakers and the institutional money and the plunge protection team, consisting of world governments, world investment funds, international banks, and policymakers, have all changed their definition of what's going on, and you see some of that unfolding in this modern treatment. That's not the first time it's happened, but it's just the most recent. And so, where all this stuff changed was right about 2003, and the internet sell-off and the bubble. Up until that point, the S&P's largest sell-off was about 25% from the highest high. And so when the internet bubble happened and all that stuff sold off, there were a bunch of guys down here that became first mice. And they said, this is already a little bit past the worst thing we've ever seen. And so they start buying this with leverage, expecting that they could make a nice move and get back to here as the third mouse. And then when it reached a new all-time high, and then everybody has to be in, well, then it gets really easy. And now the fourth mouse and the fifth mouse are in. And so they're able to really take advantage of this about a 25% sell-off. So everybody leverages and gets long. And then instead of going up, it loses another 30% in the S&P and 60% in the NASDAQ, because there was no real substance in there. It was kind of the giant hype machine. So at one point, the NASDAQ was down something like, 20 plus 60 was down 80%. from the highest height, and everybody thought the world was going to change for the second time. Well, from about 2003 to 2007, there was an enormous grinding, unbelievable, turned out to be a bull, which was like about to get back up to the top was something like a 75% move. And everything is back to normal. Just in time. So this is 2007. And, Fed had pumped a lot of money, and the housing, the housing bubble, 2008. So housing crashes in 2008 hurts the market. And then because so much of the market had been built, so much of the money that had been earned here in equities rolled over to buy the next hot thing, which was the mortgage-backed securities, you get another meltdown in 2009. So you actually have two additional times in which the market from a high sold off at least 50%. And that was a 50% sell, and then a rebound, and then another 50% sell-off. So the combination of these two sells and then the 2003 sell-off, or 2001 to 2003, crushed so many people. You're not supposed to see that many. Well, that's a once-a-century kind of an event. And everybody thought they'd seen it in 1929. So now we've seen it three times in a matter of about 6 years. And everybody started getting gun shy because there was a lot more leverage and a lot more interconnectivity in the global markets. There's no safe spaces. So it moves that used to take weeks and months to unfold are now taking days and weeks or hours and days. And so I come back to this previous definition of, well, let me make that share. So I come back to this little definition here that, it's noise down to 10%, and then it's a correction until it's 20%, and then that's the beginning of the bear. The way the markets are behaving now, and you can see it in Fed announcements and when the Treasury Department speaks and commentators, this is all about cut in half now. We just got to cut all this stuff in half. And now what used to be, at 10% is now 5%. So at 5%, anything less than 5% is about noise. And 5% is now being treated as if it were it's almost like a whisper number, for earnings. It's like there's a whisper correction starting at 5, and at 10, as it approaches 10%, which used to just be the boundary of a normal correction. They weren't even calling it a correction until it was at 10%. Now they're acting the same way at 5% as they were at 10%. You're already seeing panic selling in here and changing of positions and a shift to defensive sectors. And then at 10%, which they used to just call a correction, they're now acting like this is the end of the world. That's what this first little sell-off in the first downside from Trump, when his little bubble got pricked, people were talking about this as if that was, entering a potential bear market in fear and loathing. And so everything is like accelerated by a factor of 2. So that's what made this a 10% sell-off. This was seen as an extraordinary opportunity, but all it did was come back to here, and then instead of just continuing to go, it got crushed, and then there was another bounce, and everybody got on that, and then that got crushed, and then this last little harsh sell-off was an additional 10%. Well, in the olden days, it would have taken a move to this level to say, hey, well, mate, we're on the edge of a bear market. But all this panic talk that normally would have happened at 20% was all being set up in here. And you have the extraordinary events of things like the Treasury Secretary coming in and talking in a tweet to trying to calm the market. Well, no, that had never happened before. And so now all of a sudden, God, if those guys are worried, maybe we really should be worried. And people were reacting around the 20% sell-off like they were on these 50 and 60% sell-offs. So that's just how scared the markets really are. And the secret of all this, the hidden secret, is that the problem with 2008 and 2009 was that nobody had any visibility on the interconnectivity of all those leveraged notes that were being shuffled around like poker chips. And now 10 years later, it's worse. Nobody still knows. Only now it's moved out of just mortgage-backed securities into all other sorts of derivatives and the dark markets and bitcoins, and then you add on top of that the Trump factor of that goddamn lunatic in a world in which Putin is flexing his muscle, and when Russia flexes their muscle geopolitically, it has reverberations into the oil markets, which drives the entire rest of the world's business cycle. And then you see the effects of so you got the Trump factor, you have Putin, you have crypto, which threatens to undermine the entire international world order because it ends the good old boys club of being able to manipulate currencies with ease and a promise. And then you add the Arab, the new spring, the Arab Spring, I should say, which threatens to upset the status quo in the Middle East. And now all of a sudden, those four factors, but really leveraged through Trump and his ability to just change foreign policy in 140 characters of the last 25 years. The last 25 years of hard work by the U.S. for foreign policy gets changed in a single tweet. So that's the nature of this. Put a little gold star around this whole thing. This is the golden opportunity for day and swing trading, because this was the golden opportunity for swing and core trading, the longer term stuff,
right?
Because it was America, MAGA, and all that shit. That took about 2 years to unfold. That's the same thing that happened between 2003 to 2007. Was this unerring, grinding, bullish move that nobody could believe, but yet you can believe it. Now nobody can believe the Trump bump. Well, starting, at about the middle of this of 2018, all that shit went away, and so the second half of 2018 was the worst. That made 2018 the worst year in recorded history for most asset classes. 93% of all asset classes finished the year negative. Worst ever. Now, the percentage losses were not anything like 2008, 2009, or 2001, 2, and 3, or 1929. But in terms of the widespread damage, extraordinary. Well, I think the reason that it didn't get any worse is because all the people are getting out 50% faster, because they're now triggering at 5% the decisions they used to make at 10%. And the decisions they were making at 10% were things they used to wait till 20%. So that's why I say all of that simply to say that this period of time in here destroyed lots of hedge funds and algorithmic traders, because they had never seen behavior like that in all of the back-tested period. So all of that tells me all of their leveraged models, and the leverage is what was contributing to the size of the swing. That tells me all their leverage models are improper or naive or first or second generation. So you say to yourself, well, if the freaking algos and the international guys are having trouble in this time frame, what's an individual person to do? What the hell do you do? I mean, I actually had some officers talking to me about their thrift savings plan this week, which tells me that these are guys that are now worrying at a 20% sell-off that were only starting to worry after the 50% sell-off. So you can already see that this halving effect, or the doubling effect, has started to reach the mainstream, the huddled masses. And I attribute that to just the proliferation of talking heads and social media and incessant chatter in our heads. So this, I now think, is the new normal, this whole 5 and 10%, which really only tells me that there's really only a buffer of about 2.5% from the swing high. That, to me, is about the noise level. At 2.5%, I'm already starting to treat these things as potential signals coming down to 5 and then to 10%. So my little window of safety net, in the Dow and the S&P, is something like 2.5% rather than what used to have been 10%. So I've even doubled more in terms of my own sensitivity to this. And the reason I'm getting sensitive to that is because I'm 62 and I'm not 42, and that I've got to be more aware of this accelerated rate of change in the markets at my age than I used to have at 40, because at 40, I still had 60 years to react. At 60, I only got 40 years to react if I'm going to live to 100, which I don't think I am, but, I'm holding out hopes for that. So I say all that just to say, how do you respond to this when you realize that with the increase of computing power and robots and all that shit and algorithms, that the competition to come up with the next best adaptive strategy is already at the tipping point and beyond, all right? Because when AlphaGo, and that's the one that really ought to freaking scare us up in here, much more so than all these other things, but the impact of AlphaGo. So let me tell you, the AlphaGo defeated the world champion of chess a couple years ago. And just last year, though, AlphaGo takes on a world champion of Go, one of the 3 strongest players ever to play the game. And the complexity of Go compared to chess is astronomical. You already can't compute they can't compute all the games of chess. And Go is a million times more, it's even more than a million. It's geometrically more complex than chess. But AlphaGo, starting from scratch and just learning they uploaded the rules and then played against itself for 4 hours and generated an algorithm that defeated the strongest chess player, or the strongest Go player ever to play. And that's in 2018. So where are we going to be in 20 years to be able to respond to that kind of learning capacity, that kind of adaptiveness? Does that spell the end of, well, I don't know. But I say all that to say now what I am finally ready to say to you. And that is that this approach of the multi-time frame, multi-lens model of analyzing price levels is fractal and the most robust way that I know to approach estimating value for the next 5-10 years, and what I'm doing all the time now. And we modeled that in the December 2018 workshop in that small group of guys, and it just kind of naturally flowed out of all the things that I've been teaching over the last 25 years or so. It sort of has come together in a really tight integrated package. So 2018, my goal was to get squared away on swing trade framing and to do a better job of working on that. Previous 5 years, I've been really concentrating hard on day trading. And so that was the generation of the frog with a minimum information value. And can we get a system? Yes, we can. Then variations on the frog, and then the RLCO framework and patterns in there, and then the combination of those two things. And then after 3 to 5 years of intense effort in those, the pinch and stretch integration of last year really solidified for me a top-down strategic view of the behavior of price through time as expressed through different ways of measuring the size and scope of those moves as a way to really understand the DNA of the psychology of the markets and the participants, right? So the pinch and stretch was a really powerful synthesis of all those ideas for me. And so from that, things like the second generation of RLCO developed that was able to relax more and say, hey, let the P1 be the P1, let it get an RLXD, let the 5 criteria of the OWL take charge for you on a swing trade. When I looked at day trading, that led to the chain trading idea of the hybrid frog, so we don't have to wait around as long for a full frog box to move. So we can use the hybrid frog to get in without overthinking it, and then quickly let that transition, if it works big, like it moves another hybrid frog box, then by definition we have a significant move, an uncontroversial move, an undisputed move. So now we know that thing is in play. And now we can start using the calibration of the RLCO and the Bollinger Bands and use that to start finding the owl or a collapsing dragon. And then we can start using our technical indicators to an advantage. So we use the hybrid frog to use the advantage of minimal amount of information to get in. That's an advantage to be able to do that. I'm not waiting around for confirmation. I can let simple price dynamics get me in without overthinking it, because you can't find rhyme or reason in that chaos in the opening. But the hybrid frog takes care of that. And then if it's not successful, it's a fractional loss, and you just keep frogging around until you start getting these undisputed moves that allow you to use the RLCO. So the hybrid frog leads into the chain trade, which is if it's a reversion to the price mean, then it's an owl. And if it's not, if the owl fails or if it just hesitates and fails, then you have a collapsing dragon, and that's the best pattern of all, because fear is easier than greed, and it's already failed one leg, and you already have money in the bank because of the hybrid frog, and you couldn't even get into the owl, so now you're into the collapsing dragon, and off you go. So that little mentality of the chain trading and the owl and the collapsing dragon was an intraday application of this pinch and stretch synthesis that I had been working on. So my goal for 2018 was to get us out of the day trade, because when I did a survey of folks, what I found was something like let me expand this more so I have room to draw. Image. Yeah, so when I did the survey, about 90% of the people were interested in swing, and about 10% were interested in gold. And that helped explain a lot of the things that were going on with like attendance over at the Van Tharp Institute. That, the day trading numbers were just not interested. People were kind of interested in the currencies and in swing trading. And because both of those operate in a time frame that people with real jobs and who maybe don't have the willingness or the physiology to sit at the, for hours at the screen and fight against the robots. It takes a special kind of gladiator to get in there and play day trading in the conventional wisdom. And so rather than that, people are moving in this direction. And you're seeing a lot of people in what I would call the core time frame. This is the kind of monthly and beyond. even people who are swing trading are interested in going there. Can they fire and forget? Plus, you got all the noobs coming in, people who are using robots to put their, twice a month or monthly payments with the robot, robot money into these long-term algorithms that look like blended monthly rebalancing or asset allocation and annual rebalancing or some variation. So there was this kind of a sense that of those three time categories, clearly things were moving from east to west. And it looked to me like swing trading was the important way to develop more skills to meet more people's needs. Because we had some guys that were doing BMR, but who were seeing opportunities to maybe get more core and turbo that way. And then there were people who had swing trades that were successful that were becoming long-term positions. So it was clear to me that this seam between the core and the swing was arbitrary, and that the rules worked as long, and it was just how frequently you wanted to make the decisions and how tight your stops are going to be. And that's the pinch and stretch really helped me see that. And for years I've been saying anyway that the swing trades make the best day trades, because this thing is going to go up for 3 to 5 days. Well, if you know that and you have a directional bias, you can really leverage that into a series of intraday trades with day trade size and very small initial risk, because the main difference being is you're making a lot of decisions fast, and you have to account for the size of the overnight gap in your position sizing. Well, that makes you're able to be at least 5 times bigger intraday as you are compared to a swing trade, because you don't have to contend with that gap. Well, you can get bigger at this through some engineering, but even if you're just a swing trader and you want to occasionally day trade, you can still get some position sizes that are amazing, but without any additional management risk, because the patterns are fractal. The same logic that you use on the swing trade in terms of interpreting the RLCO and the Bollinger Bands and the minimum manageable risk box and and the MACD histogram, which I haven't even covered yet, all of those patterns are fractal. So you're not having to learn new decision rules and new chart interpretation or new patterns. It's all the same pattern. It's just that you're making those decisions intraday rather than once every day or once every week. So you're making a lot of little decisions. And so because you can have a much tighter initial risk, your position sizing can increase without a corresponding risk to dollars. We okay so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're more with you than you know.
Okay. So now as I looked at the nature of these seams, now in the same way I can do this core position can become a turbo. This core position here can become a turbo. And this turbo position or normal position can become at a lower position size with a wider stop, but with much less management. You can just let that thing grind and let its normal momentum happen. And so now this boundary seems much more arbitrary to me than ever before. So as I think about this is kind of cool. I just bought another digital pen so I could do this with a pen on a tablet instead of a mouse, but I haven't implemented it. So this is still all mousing around. Sorry. So instead of having these three things that are separated by a solid wall, my next move was to kind of make these. This was kind of a dotted line, if you will. And now there's really this kind of set of core competencies, or I would just call it technique, that supports trading in all of these dimensions, and also supports the psychology of the self. Because now if we think about systems, self, and market, you know, these techniques are things that can be applied to all the time frames up in here, but they also help us understand the market and all its dimensions. And then there's, you know, techniques and tips and practices that help with the self. So in my view, my goal for 2019, I talked about that in the chat room just today. I said my goal for 2019 is to do a better job of cleaning up all the techniques that you can find up in here and assembling that into sort of a, you know, the trader's tool bag, the modules and the techniques and the processes that lead to good systems work, good market understanding, and then management of self in all of those time frames. So you get something like an integrated trading across all these time frames, and then you just pick the area in which you want to operate. Say, hey, I don't want to be a day trader. Fine, I'll just concentrate in this area. But if I ever wanted to, I know this stuff could move over. I just choose not to. So you get a choice on how you want to allocate your time across those three dimensions. And so this is the area that I want to work on here. Things like the 2R battle drill, the plan, prepare, execute, assess speech, the 0 state, about entering the dojo and preparing your mind for proper trading, that long flow chart that I do that maps the you know, from the time the market closes to, you know, give gratitude and forgiveness, and you go through all those little steps in the process to the point where you are now ready to trade. The whole how I do the preparation and then how I do the timing intraday. Those two things there are not system specific. They are techniques that allow you to get your mind right for the day ahead, so that you are truly prepared to trade, so that you can decompress and deprocess all this stuff and then go through a systematic way of getting your warrior face on and then being ready to execute effectively. This whole preparation process is enormous. So when I talk about the planning is trivial, preparation is immense, execution is trivial, and then assessment is even more important than preparation. Now I say actually preparation is the most important, because if you don't prepare properly, your execution, you're going to get killed in execution, and you're not going to be around long enough to even assess. But once you get your preparation to a manageable level where you can survive, now what really distinguishes you from the herd is your ability to assess. And now each trade, which is plan, prepare, execute. Yeah. No, I'm on the web right now. So each one of these things is now an important sample of one, but it's part of this database of similar trades. And after you assess it, it goes into your database of lessons learned. So the trades are the things that you're studying, but it's the lessons that you learn in this learning database that makes it, that tells you whether or not you can continue to adapt to this world that looks like a dog's breakfast, where all these learning algorithms, this is what you're trying to battle against, is all the learning algorithms that are trying to make sense of all this crap. The learning algorithms have already made sense of all that stuff. That's why they were killing it during this run-up in the Trump years. But when that all changed, they got blown up because they couldn't learn as fast as the world was changing. So now the real challenge where you have to compete is in the ability to learn faster. So in my view, all of this learning technology, this assessment phase that you're doing, is part of plan, prepare, execute, and assess. That learning, the way you learn as an adult, and then how you apply it to systems, how you apply it to the market, how you apply it to your own psychology, there is a common theme in here, which is the adaptive learning capacity. And Van has called that, the respondability for years. I don't, I don't know the extent to what you say about it, but I think that's the fundamental thing that I've learned from him, and credit to him for saying it so long and so often. Role responsibility, your personal learning environment, the PLE, is what's crucial. And that's why you see me spending so much time at the start of every workshop where I talk about the best way to use the workshop is through the use of that 4-part learning journal, so that you can do the experience, the reflection, the commitment to action, and then assess the results. And then those results become the next aha moment, and so on and so on. So you start getting this synergy of this learning journal. That whole assessment technology, if you will, is what makes the assessment portion of plan, prepare, execute, assess so important, which is why you've got to do the daily debriefing in order to learn from this. So here's what I'm going to tell you, and I said this to Dan in the chat room today, that if you make a mistake on an impulsive trade, what you think is a mistake, you're only allowed to call that a mistake if you don't assess it and learn from it. If you just say, oh, that was a mistake, I'll never do that again, but you don't really explore the logic behind it. Why did that happen? If you don't explore that, then it really was a mistake. And the mistake was not what you did, but the mistake was the failure to use that as a teachable moment to discover something deep in your own psychology. That's the mistake, not the... Now, if you traded at such a huge size that mistake caused you to leave the game of trading, well, then that's a self-correcting error, and that was the last mistake of that kind you'll ever make. But if you've already learned the things about position sizing so that you're never trading at a level of risk that gets you out of the game, you'll always be able to keep trading, and you keep trading so that you have the opportunity to learn. And that's why the whole technology of personal learning environment is so important. And that's why, for me, the year 2019 is about developing these techniques. And part of that is accelerated learning. And then if you remember my earlier discussions about Mike Simmons and his approach to experiential entrepreneurial learning is so good, and why I'm so bitter as an old fat man that he learned that stuff by the time he was 30, and it took me till I was 50 to learn all that stuff. I mean, I was busy carrying rucksacks and blundering my way through teaching and all that stuff, but I really admire the work that he's done. And the underlying ideas that he's talked about are not unique to him, but his way of packaging it is very nice and stylish and quality at a reasonable price. The real ideas, though, are those 100 mental models that Munger talks about. This is where the pen would really help. So Charlie Munger's 100, those things that I teach on the Kolb experiential learning model, the action research, and then the 4-part learning journal, those are all the technologies of, like, hey, if you just read Charlie Munger's book and now you had a working knowledge at the conceptual level of those 100 models, you still haven't put any of that into practice. The things that I am teaching you about learning, about how to put it into action, and then how to analyze the results and feed that back into learning, you won't find that in those 100 models, but you will find that in the world of experiential learning and adult learning. So those are the things that I think that I want to, part of the things I want to focus on this year is how to turn all of the ideas of experiential learning and then some of these other ideas I'm about to get into on the rapid framing using the swing trade as my goals for 2019. So let me go a little bit further now on this. All right. So now the main idea is that, and I'm going to get back to this idea about the swing targeting framing. So you're going to recognize these models. What I'm about to say is that, look, on the monthly and the weekly, you are definitely a position trader. or you're in a blended monthly rebalancing business out in here. Let's see. So this is, I'm going to just call that core in BMR style. BMR is one of the techniques of the core style of trading. It's still the best one until we look at some other things Bob and I have been working on. But at least modified BMR, I'll call it modified BMR. You're certainly you're in the monthly and weekly. You are explicitly monthly on the BMR, but you can actually do some things on a weekly basis that it's legitimate to say, look, if I was doing this as my core and then weekly was my turbo, I'm still really a core trader and just dabbling on the weekly. And if I was, if I'm a swing trader, I could be a slow swing trader here on the weekly or daily charts, and then I could be a swing trader that's starting to dabble in here. If I was weekly on swing, I might be turbo using the day. And if I was a daily swing trader, I might be turbo, on the 2 hour, or all of this stuff intraday. Now, what I'm not showing you here is that going beyond the 30 minutes, 30-minute chart to me is the actual time boundary between swing trading and day trading. I think you can be a swing trader from monthly all the way over to 30 minutes. It's just that a monthly swing is a really slow swing. I might almost just call it core. Right? So I think probably the legitimate boundary, in my view, of the swing is weekly to 30 minutes. And anywhere in this time frame you can be, if that's where you're spending most of your time, then you're a swing trader. Pure day traders, to me, are operating on tick charts, 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, 60 minute, or 30 minute, excuse me. All right, so really, I'm sorry, I should say between 1 and 10, and you are legitimately a pure day trader. Once you get above 10, the next stop to me is either 15 or I just use 30 because it's 3 times that. So I see a person who inhabits this range as evenly split between swing trading and day trading. And this is what I think of as the hybrid. Yeah, don't see it. So this is really the hybrid between swing and day. Now, the one thing that you'll notice then is that, therefore, the swing trader can legitimately swing trade, purely swing trading, using 30-minute charts. And you could even go further if you wanted, I suppose. But you could be intraday and only be thinking about swing trade position sizing and not trying to get into all the leverage and the engineering that we do over in here for the day trading, like, hybrid frog and the owl and the collapsing dragon and the C3P and the VWAP magnet trade and all that stuff. That's kind of pure intraday stuff. But you can use these RLCO and MACD histogram patterns, and RLCO 1 and 2 on 30-minute charts and never even be technically a day trader, because you're making these turns a lot faster. So on a swing trade on daily charts, it looks like this, that you might have to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days to get in here. When you look at that same pattern on a 30-minute chart, there's 15 little ticks inside here. There's 15 30-minute bars inside a day. So you might be able to get into that thing down here. It's the same pattern with the same degree of safety. And because you're managing at that level, you can draw your stop, your execution stop here instead of way down here. So you can have maybe 2 to 3 times the swing position size on a 30-minute chart as compared to what you can have on the daily. And you can actually make some nice trades on those 15 bars in here, and then revert and then sell 2/3 of it, and then have your overnight position size reflective as the size of the gap on the daily, And if it's still working, you can add those 2 or 3 positions back in here and comfortably never get out of the 2-hour or 30-minute time window without even trying to finagle the extra size that you can get from the pure day trading approach. If you're over in here, you can get 5 to 10 times the position sizing, because when those little patterns move, 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes, and you've got your stop here, this might only be 20 cents in the Dow. So you got this really tight position size, whereas on the 30-minute chart, that might be $1. And on the daily, that might be $3. So it's all the same patterns, but you can comfortably take advantage of your swing trading without getting burned out by 1 minute or tick charts by simply looking at the 2-hour and the 30 minutes. And so the key to those, the things that work the best on those time frames are the ones that fire on daily swing trades, or which were monthly BMR patterns, which became good swing trade patterns, which then become good ultra turbo patterns on the 30-minute chart. So you can actually be operating at 3 different levels of position sizing and risk. This might be 1 position. This might be a second position. This might be 2 scoops. So you might have 50% of your position being controlled by the 30-minute time frame, and 25% being controlled by the swing, and 25% by the market. Hey, guess what we just reinvented, guys? Market, sector, target. 50, 25, 25. So if you get this piece right in the market, you're in great shape with your core. Over here with the core. And if you get this piece right on this little middle distance, you get that next position, you're okay right there. Then only if you want to do you want to get faster than 30 minutes and leverage it down in here and get that extra piece. Well, in my view, you can get 2 positions. The position I can get here just on the intraday is as big as what I can accumulate on good long-term swings. And now the nice thing is, if I feel like the market is threatening on a tactical time, my core and position, guess what I can do? I can put a hedge on with that size money, and I can completely get market neutral on my longer term swings, and now I don't have to mess around with that at all. I don't have to worry about the gap at all, because an adverse gap against these positions is negated by the leveraged position I have here, so I'm truly market neutral, and I can just wake up in the morning, and if those things are starting to work, I can take that position off. If everything is failing and I want to start making money, I can add another position here, and now I'm making money while this part of the position is keeping that neutral. So now there is a harmonious connection. If I can come back to this one now. Where am I? So instead of having this, 3 separate, core swing day with some kind of, a seam in between here that I'm figuring out how to pass information between those, I really have this integrated time view that is tied together by technique, and then that technique field is how we can generate systems, market understanding, and then that personal psychology of self. And that's where this whole pile of the learning technology, the learning piece, now comes in. The technique of learning is a technique to improve our psychology. But that's just one of the techniques I'm talking about here. It's how to treat this as a seamless whole, and then how to do this fractal multiple time frame trade framing that we demonstrated in the 2018 2018-12 swing workshop, which is so damn powerful. All right. So I say all that so that I can now talk about what I wanted to talk about, which was, if I can see if I can. I'll probably leave it in there so you guys know that I'm not actually a robot.
Yeah. We've been wondering all these years.
So I'm gonna learn. So just in case, Control V. So Oh no. All right, so here's the application of this idea. Let me get a pen. So what we're going to do is we're going to start up in this corner and then work our way down to this corner here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the monthly and work my way down. And all I am doing is I take, let's say, SPY, and just start here and say, what does the MACD what do the 4 seasons of the MACD histogram tell me? And then I look at it in terms of the relative pinch and stretch of that symbol. How wide is it expanding, contracting? How wide is it pinched, or wide is it sideways? That kind of stuff. I'm going to look for specific the P1 through P7 patterns, and then that second generation. I'm looking for owls and Z3Ps and collapsing dragons, and I'm marking up the chart on the monthly basis here. Where would I add a position? Where would I stop? What are my profit targets? Then I'm going to look at it from an RLFF perspective and take a look at the excursions of the RL10 to the RL7. I'm going to look at is that space expanding or contracting? Is it abnormally higher? Can I frame any trades that way? And then I'm just going to look for just plain support and resistance, and that is like monthly highs and lows, the previous time frames highs and lows. So what I've done that, and I marked that whole chart up, I then and only then shift to the weekly, and now I can see where those red line, the red lines, and okay, bite me. The red lines and the son of a gun. So I can start doing the highs and lows. I'll do the high and low of the day. Only I'll do that for the monthly bar. Say if it was inside here and then broke out through that green line, then I'm long, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas if it broke out this way, I'm short, and then I'm just using this region in here as the yellow zone for tactical trading. But a move out to a new monthly high above yesterday or last month's high or low now has information value that this thing is going. This is going to be one of these things, or it's going to be one of those things. Meanwhile, when it's in here from a tactical perspective, I'm just being trading in the yellow zone. Oh, by the way, that whole green, yellow, and red zone, that's one of those techniques that I think needs to be on our tool belt as a rapid estimation lens. This is what this is essentially green, yellow, and red is the model for framing. So once I've done the monthly, now I dial into the weekly and go through the same thing. And now I end up adding a lot more things, like maybe this was the size of the move for the monthly, and then here was a weekly, and then there's a daily, and there's a 2-hour. So now it may be that if this thing had bottomed out and is now starting to move its way up, it may be that the fastest time frame that I've decided to manage, maybe it triggers right here, and then it goes up here, and then it's up in here. And so now I have found reasons from the higher time frames to justify entries at those levels, because the entry at this level was justified, and maybe the stop loss on that was down here. And if that's one risk unit for that one, I could see a reason over the core time frame that he could get 2 units of reward. So if this was 1 unit of risk, there was my 2 and my 3, and I might find that over the course of 3 to 6 months, 6 months from now, this thing could get to here and it wouldn't be outrageous. So that's the justification for entering with a wide stop at that price level. But rather than letting that be the first one in, if I can be these other time frames, it may be that on this on the 30-minute or the 2-hour, I could get a stop here, And so now all I have to see, if that's 1 unit of reward, or 1 unit of risk, then I only have to see it be able to get to here to justify the entry at this level. You follow me on that one?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it might be that at the second entry here, that the stop loss for that, the stop loss for that one is here. And so now this is the risk box, and I have to have 2 units of that risk here in this, on the daily charts. So now what I can do is I can start off intraday, and it works. Hey, it keeps working, and it keeps working, and it keeps working. And there's all these other places that I've been marking off as resistance levels. And if it didn't fail at those, if it fails at that, I have the 2-hour battle drill to get out. I know how to get out of a winning position, and the same thing here, and the same thing here. So now I have this series of, potential entries. I have this series of potential resistance levels that if it starts failing, I know how to decide. I have these series of appropriate stops that allow me to calibrate my position size and evaluate reward to risk. And now I have just a series of little decisions that I have to make at each one of those things, and that becomes the 2-hour battle drill. And then I just have to decide how much of the position to get out. And if I've started building the position up this way, I typically increment in and then get all out if I've hit resistance and it's failing. But as I come to these different time frames, what I have to do is start peeling off these shorter time frame positions, because the overnight gap is too large to allow me to sleep comfortably at night and to be within my 2-to-1 reward to risk. So intraday, I can be adding these extra positions as we go and then just peeling them off. But I might still be able to preserve the long-term position. But it may be that I've made enough money that I just say, you know what, it's time to just all out because of reasons. Well, I'd rather be on the outside wishing I was in than on the inside wishing I was out. And I know how to re-enter positions in the usual way. So that's the relationship now between, as you go through each of these sequences, it's all the same standard trade framing through 5 different lenses of MACD, histogram, pinch and stretch, RLCO, RLFF, support and resistance with green, yellow, red. And there is enough variety in that approach that I don't feel like I'm locked into one narrow view of the world. That what I actually have is getting back to this idea that when I look now at the market and at the systems, I have 5 different techniques for rapidly evaluating the market, which are independent enough of each other that I'm not getting tunnel vision. So I can use the learning approach to study myself. I can use this lens, these multiple lenses, to evaluate systems and markets. I should probably say those were about the markets. And now the system is that rule set that allows me to be me and still effectively navigate in the market. And that's where this whole idea of strategies versus systems. A system is that robotically traded thing. A strategy is the one where you're able to use some of your trader discretion to make your decisions. So the techniques for doing that is a technique. How to choose which one or what combination of both of those. How do you create a system of systems or a blended portfolio? That's a technique. So when I think about this year's focus, it's really to be the year of technique.
Yes.
For me, it's going to be the year of technique to help me understand systems. To help me understand systems, the market, and the psychology of self as it pertains to those 3 different. Boy, my mouse is really starting to act crazy now. The core, the swing, and the day, tied together by a common fractal frame of reference, how to apply that, and to see this as a unified whole, with just the only difference in the decision making is the amount of time in between decision cycles, and then the volatility of the markets will tell you how wide a stop you have to be able to operate safely on that cycle of decision making. So now that's why the all-important understanding of volatility, that how it becomes much more important in here in the day, and then it kind of flattens out to a long-term historical. That's why this technique that we're talking about, the short-term frog box to handle the 30-day standard deviation of volatility, and then the long-term frog box that looks at the 300-day standard deviation of volatility. That's that long-term frog box. So you can see how that idea starts to be not just connected to the specific system of the frog, but is really part of an approach to an integrated look at volatility across the entire time span, from core and monthly all the way down to the 1 minute intraday. The nature of volatility changes, and so the short-term hybrid and short-term frog box and the long-term frog box is a way to reflect that in a systematic way that's consistent in all those different time frames. So I say all that now to say another core lesson that's absolutely fundamental is the idea of the difference between the position sizing risk and the execution risk, or whether we're going to call it sort of like the X risk. That this is the one, that's the specific amount of risk you have to pay to find out that the signal or the pattern didn't work. The position sizing risk is geared towards the volatility of these different time frames that you're working at. So for me, the day trade, it's a full frog box is where you should be starting off as your position sizing risk. Then you get paid to explore the execution risk. You get paid to start making it fractions, so that you're taking fractional losses compared to your position sizing risk. So you can try a lot of times to get it right. And then when it gets right and you get a 2 full R win on a full frog box positioning, it pays for all those false starts. So the understanding that difference between execution risk and position sizing risk is absolutely essential. And it's one of those technique things that I want to normalize. So what I got to do in 2019 is put all of these damn techniques into a nice workbook, a nice or a Batman utility belt, so that we can accelerate people's understanding of how all these different pieces tie together across all these different time frames. So I feel pretty comfortable where I am right now on the day trading and on the core and on the swing trading in terms of systems. I feel really good on the whole, the learning pieces, and then how to do this multiple time frame framing as demonstrated in the 2019goals. And now, to me, it's time to clean all that up and put it into an accessible form so we can use this accelerated learning to learn these techniques, like the 2R battle drill, green, yellow, red, systems thinking. So my goal in this year, in the first quarter, is to produce a standalone, very good systems thinking workshop that gives you the how to think in a systems thinking way in order to think about markets, systems, self, process management, control. All of that stuff is a subset of systems thinking. Critical thinking, to do that in order to understand the limitations and tendencies of our own monkey mind. That is a second workshop I'm going to do in the second quarter. I've got plenty of material finally to do all that. So getting those two right and getting them into usable workshop and home study course form with all the forms and the smart books is my goals for this year. So that's what I wanted to say about the multi-time frame, multi-lens swing trade framing and where I've been so far. Now I want to shift gears to what we were talking about earlier and make another connection for you guys so that you are not just locked into what's coming out of my head or your head. But so in my view, where we are, historically, you had heuristics, people reading things like Who's that famous day trader that killed himself?
Livermore.
Livermore. So, the Livermore heuristics, and then the Warren Buffett heuristics, and then the super traders, or whatever they were. Van was one of the, what was Van? Market Wizard. I'm sorry, not super traders. My bad. I was thinking kind of the conventional wisdom of the turtles, and then the market wizards, and then all of the guys in the go-go years and the super day traders, and now has become the algorithms of various types. So as this whole thing has been evolving, the time frames in which things were valid, the half-life is decreasing. The interval, what's working is no longer. So like in the second half of 2018, if this was 2018 here, this Trump bump was extraordinary. That was one of the all-time best 6-month periods in terms of purity of the slope and lack of volatility. One of the best all-time 6 months ever. And then this crap in the last, and that's about where we are now in the last 6 months, made 2018 the worst year ever for asset classes. I'm reviewing some stuff we covered earlier, but 93% of asset classes finished the year negative. Now, the percentage loss was not as great, but we talked about that already. But psychologically, this was as painful as people who can't remember 2008 and 2009, because those guys aren't even around anymore. So this feels like the worst thing. And remember that was 10 years ago. Can you imagine that? The financial crisis and all that was 10 years ago.
Seems like yesterday.
And if you were 23 and you're a day trader, that didn't hit your radar. And the internet bubble was 20 years ago. Nobody remembers any of that stuff. So the calibrated price losses that are getting people's attention because they're nervous is much narrower than all this look back period. So in my view, all of the algorithms that are based on long-term look backs on price levels and percentages are worthless because of the nature of volatility and attention span has changed. So if the algorithms are getting smoked, how do you come up with, it's your algorithm generation process. It's not the golden bullet or the silver bullet of finding the holy grail of the best algorithm. It's now, what is your process for generating new algorithms? And if you think about my comments about you should be developing systems before you need them, so that when you need them, you already have them. Here's the other thing. Don't ever throw away systems. Just because they're out of favor now, the market may come back into that condition. So you should always paper trade things that used to work and are now broken, and then track their system quality number when it comes back up. Now at some point, just like RLCO tells you, it's time to get back into that thing on the basis of its R multiple distribution and system quality number, or I think you just use the slope of the 30 trade regression line. The slope stat on the trade, it tells you when it's good enough. So I say all that simply to say that back in this era, neural networks dominated. And I used to think 10 and 15 years ago, with computing power, all you ever really had to do was take this whole batch of price data, whatever the price data was, and then just every night rerun your neural network and trade it forward on one day. And then do statistics to say, was today's pattern significantly different enough that I need to rerun the model? Or with computing power, you could just rerun the model every night. Because in an hour, you can hey, if AlphaGo can teach itself Go from scratch in 4 hours, then surely it could regenerate a neural network every night and be good to go. Now, the thing that makes neural networks pale in comparison is this idea of genetic algorithms. Because what it can do is it can do a neural network, find the It can do principal characteristic or principal components analysis, which finds the significant. It uses the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, to find the 20% of the variables responsible for 80% of the value. And then the neural net would tell you how to trade using those. What you can do with the genetic algorithm is do that PCA and then have it run mutations with thousands of iterations, and from that generate the robust adaptive systems, so you're doing thousands or million times more powerful than individually running the neural network that you can imagine. And with computing power, you can now do that. So I say all that simply to say that MSA is the best way that I know right now to take all of the ideas that you have, isolate them down to the key variables, and then run that through the genetic algorithm analyzer in MSA to come up with your next series of amazing things. And that little workshop that I sent you a note on, that guy showed how he could use MSA to generate 700 variations of robust algorithms, which if you took sort of the aggregate performance, look like that, just pure goodness compared to the market or to other individual systems. The aggregate of a system of systems generated by MSA to do that, that looks to me right now, if I was a Rip Van Winkle and I had to go from here's today, this was today, and I had to just stop everything and go to sleep, and I had to pick an algorithm to generate systems, this is what I would pick. I would pick the genetic algorithms as worked in MSA. I would become proficient at that, and then use that to generate signals, or to generate systems that I could then take signals in. So that's why I encourage you guys to think about at your age. And at your age, you really have practical immortality. You might be alive for another 150 or 200 years. And so by that point, who knows what the computers are generating? All I do know is that the most successful technology in the universe for learning is DNA. DNA created species on the Earth, or it manifested a technology in which species could evolve through a myriad of unpredictable environmental factors to generate so far the most successful species on the planet, mankind. Now, what we lack is wisdom because we're just highly evolved chimps. So that chimpanzee component of our nature is what makes trading possible, but also so difficult. So you've got to learn how to become a human who can master the chimp mind and apply the various psychological elements of our human cognition, and combining that with the cyber possibility. So we've essentially got to become the cyborg. The cyborg trader is what we've got to become, so we can take the best of the technology of AI along with a deep understanding and appreciation for our monkey nature, so that we never ever fully rely on just the machine, but we have to blend both of those. So that is the very definition of cyborg trading, which we'll just coin that now. So I say all that simply to say I strongly encourage you to take a look at MSA and consider whether or not that tool kit that's offered. And if it's not that one, you should be looking around. What I would do is I would call Mike Bryant if I was you and ask him for his best recommendation on the steepest learning curve or the fastest learning curve to use MSA and what he thinks, because that guy will know, because that's his tool. So that would be my recommendation for how to use a systematic approach to evaluate that workshop as something you might want to try. Think twice, measure twice, cut once. Think 3 times, measure twice, cut once. So instead of just dropping the money on that workshop, it may be the best, but it only cost you 10 cents to call Mike Bryant and ask him what he thinks about how to learn his tool. And then I think that gives you some risk management for good idea generation in the future. Not only your own brain, but now you have a systematic way of approaching it. Because I don't want you relying just on things that I'm coming up with, although I like that you pay attention to it because it makes me do good work. And it makes me feel good to see you applying it properly and doing well with it. But I'd like to, I'm trying to teach you about long-term survival here, and that is to don't have a single point of failure. That includes idea generation and then the critical thinking that generates the answer, is that a good idea or not? So creativity is by far overrated because all that is coming up with new ideas, and you can buy that. What's hard is evaluate. If in creativity, I can give you 1,000 ideas, but the trick is finding the one or two that actually can add value, and that's innovation. So innovative thinking is how to take the brute force of a gajillion new creative ideas and then applying the critical thinking that allows me to action that in an innovative way. That's where you get paid to add value. And is that idea any good? What are the new ideas? Creativity, that's cheap. Is that idea any good? That's innovation, because the herd will make a judgment about that and they will discard it, and 99% of the time they're right, but they will miss the one time that they were wrong, and that's where the innovator can see value where the herd cannot, and now you can start applying that in a way that makes money. So this MSA is a way to generate brute force number of ideas, and then through genetic algorithms optimize those. That's what helps you find the automated innovation in a sensible way. Okay, so that's I don't care how many times you got to listen to that before it makes sense, but do it. It's like the 2-hour battle drill. You need to be replaying this video a lot. So I want to just pause, and while I still have a voice left, what I want to do is just go through all this is like, so what? Okay, well, here's the so what. I want to go through my daily process for reviewing the market at the end of the day, and taking a look at a couple swing trades that I've been on board with the core and the swing, and that I've been day trading the heck out of, and just show you how I streamline that for my own particular use. Okay, so all I want to do is I'm just going to I know where I am in the monthly and the weekly because I did that this weekend, so I'm not going to review that. And I can actually see those time frames on my daily chart anyway. It's a good discipline to get into, to add those monthly and weeklies. But I'm going to expedite this and just go to the daily. So I'm looking at SPY daily, and this is let's see, just what are we? January 9th, 2019. Good thing it's on there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to, just to make sure that my 10-day look back is correct, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I'm just going to, this is all I do. This is every day. I just march these all one forward. That's those sets of 10-day look backs. And now you're going to tell me there's an automated way to do that, and I'll be really pissed because I like finishing like this. But that's right. So that so now this is from the day -1. That's 10-day, 20-day, 30-day chunks. So I look at things in 10-day chunks. That's 2 weeks. Now I'm going to move the 10-period RAF regression channel. That's where it started. That's where it ended. So that feels, from point to point at a distance, I can see the slope of the RL10. All right. Now this line here that I'm tracing is the moving RL10, but just as a snapshot, the 10-day regression line is that one. And now the 30-day is this one. And I've projected both of those forward. So the 30-day, the long-term swing trader is still, psychologically, he's suffering because although this is one leg up, this was still 2 days, 2 legs down. So he is still suffering. But there will come a time when that 30 starts to slowly turn. It's already turning, as you can see. See how the 30 is here? It's at the 6 o'clock position. This is actually now officially, potentially, an owl. Do you see that? Unambiguous move. Now, this is another example of what happens as you get older. So I'm almost, I'm 61 and a half now, and I can see some short-term brain function being lost. I couldn't say the word unambiguous to save my life 45 minutes ago. So I used the words undisputed, etc. I could not think of unambiguous to save my life. It took me this long to remember it. It eventually comes back. But that's what happens. That's why you got to get stuff automated so you're not relying on your own the wetware between your ears, right? And that's why I tell everybody, do your own due diligence. So the slope of the 30 had been terrible and is now back to flat. It's going to start hooking up, and that's the fifth criteria in the L. So first criteria, unambiguous move down, P1 outside the river. In this blue circle, the same time was the RLXD, and because of I hopefully you saw the thing on power laws that I did last week, but that RLXD is a really powerful signal. So this for me was a signal to get long in here on a swing with a stop down here at where I estimated the bottom of the dragon would be if it would work. So long at 250 with about a $7 stop. And now this is officially an owl. The red line is also where the collapsing dragon would hit. So any price inside this region, and put it that way, this is the area where the pocket decision would be made. Because I'm already in the money here, I would put it, I like a stop here at a 2-day low, just on the basis of I like that already. That making sense to you?
Yeah.
Perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've locked in from 250 to 254. So I've locked in $4 out of that swings. It's $6.50. All right. So that's about 0.6 bar just between the red line and this green line. Now, where can it get to? It already got to the Bollinger Band mean. That's why I added positions. It could get to the hump of the dragon. That's already so close to the RL 270 that I'm just going to leave it on there. And as the RL 270 comes down, I'll just start marching that down. But it could get here easily. It could also get to the hump of that dragon back here. And then at the peak of the Bollinger Band. Now, if I were, because I'd done the monthlies, the stuff would be out here too, here. That looks pretty good right there. So those are all this thing, there's no reason for me to say it can't get that high in 4 months. It got that high in the previous 4 months. So I know it can get up in here. So just on that longer term, I feel really good about an entry down here. That feels pretty good. When I come down here and look at the winter, this is where winter picked up. Look at this beauty right here. I just have to say. It went from summer to fall to winter. So we were already alerted here. See what the RL 270 is doing? Notice, I want you to just notice how everything crosses the RL 270 here, and that's where the RL 270 picks up its downward slope. It went from Trump can't be beat, MAGA, America, oops, not so much. This was among the best 6 months ever. Yeah, ever. And then this made it that year the worst year for the widest number of asset classes ever. That's how fast it can change. Oh, here was one alert. If you looked at it on a weekly chart, We can, so we will. That's where that alert happened. And so it can be all tactical trading in here on your swing trading if you wanted, but you could take that core position off. So now, just where we are right now, we're still below the zero line. When this is sloping down, that's the winter. This was the change when it went to the spring. Notice how this is almost like from P1 to P1, or this was a Z3 breakout to P1. That coincided with this RLXD, so that's why I was willing to get my initial swing position in here and then start turbo trading this all the way and added a second position today. Because now we're in the spring. So this thing still has a long way to go just to get to the zero line when we pick up the official long-term positive bias. And so when would it do that? Probably up here. But I'm going to say, I'm just going to split the difference and say, I bet you, this was the, I'm going to fine tune it. See this place of this double bottom? I'm going to say if it gets through, I bet you when it gets through 263.5, that spring will have become summer. And so this is an area where I will add a third position right there. Does that logic make sense to you?
Yeah.
So now if I get down on the 2-hour chart, this 264.57, look how orderly this move looks like. And this is what that front running and this is just on 2 hours. That's actually almost a Z3 breakout. And the owl move was here, where my stop was. So on a 2-hour chart, I could have been entering at 244, and I was. And oh, by the way, on a 30-minute chart, imagine this thing was paying attention. 30 minutes. There we go. This looks like ancient. That entry looks like ancient history. Come on. Yeah. So this is where that 2-hour. This is where that 2-hour entry was. Right where I'm circling. And so you can actually get so on a 30-minute, this is the 30-minute chart. You could be getting in here with a, $3 stop. Imagine what the 1 minute looks like. I already know you know what that looks like because you look at that all the time. But so in my view now, so now you can see the 10-day, the beginning of the 10-day move. That's nothing but a bull market. This looks like 2001 or I can't remember, 2003, the internet sell-off, and then the washout pattern at the end, and there's an owl entry here, and then it was 3 to 7 years of nothing but grinding upward movement, and all the pocket. This is where pinch and stretch comes in, some of those techniques. But the idea I want to just share with you is even on a 30-minute chart, I can be simply swing trading and do swing trading frames. This is what that entry at 250 looks like here on the daily chart. That looks like, God, I'm so late. I'll never get in. And actually, it's not bad at all. And so let's go back now to the dailies. So if you had a dozen or 20 symbols where you had each weekend, you're framing them monthly and weekly, and then the daily using that multi-frame. Your monthly and weekly stuff, you don't even have to update on a daily basis because it doesn't change that much. And now I'm going to tell you, Jeff, the way I'm using Excel to calculate the seasonality, all I'm doing is above or below the zero line. If it's above the zero line, it's summer while that slope is positive. When the slope turns negative, it's fall. Now it goes back into the summer if you're following my little marker. This is fall all the way down, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall. So that's pretty easy to code for you. And now if you use TradeStation, you could generate an automatic multi-time frame for that top row, if you see where I'm heading with this. That MACD histogram is so valuable. Now I get too much open. TradeStation's crashing on me now, or TC's crashing on me. So I guess my point would be that the that multi-time time frame, I just suggested to you a tool, a technique to do that MACD histogram seasonality evaluation across multiple time frames inside a single radar screen.
Right.
And now you could set up just the same way we do now with the way I use the 4 colors for the the ETF2, like green,
right.
white, and green, green. Now it's the same thing, only now it's, imagine that now with MACD histogram color codes for the multiple time frames. And I will tell you, that's all you need to do your brute force screening of 500 candidates. The monthly, weekly, daily seasonality for MACD histogram, you cannot miss the conditions of any. You could say, hey, what I want is monthly, winter, weekly, spring, daily, summer. It just went into summer today. And you would love that. That would be, well, if TC 2000 hadn't just crashed on here, I would show you exactly what that looks like. Because I want to finish up this little bit with just evaluating a couple other swing trades we got.
You said monthly, winter, weekly, spring, daily, summer.
Yeah, I would almost, I might even go, since you're already there, you might as well do 2 hour and 30-minute anyway. Once you get the code, it should be, it's just, the trick to me is probably figuring out how to do the TradeStation indicators in there. I mean, I do a primitive one like that already in this TC 2000, just by looking at the 5-day price movement, the 30-day price movement. It gives me some red and green stuff there. But as you know, like intraday, I'm only looking at the percent changes. So,
right.
so DIA, yeah. So I've been trading the hell out of this one in DIA, as you've just seen. Just look in the chat room, and it's like, it's so smooth, it's almost not even fair. That's how smooth it is, and which makes me feel like a moron, because guess what trades identically? UDOW. It's identical. Only my entry over on this one was like at 68, and now it's at 76. That's $8 on 68. That's a 15% move from here to there, and that's in the Dow. And it's just getting ready to do an owl. And these are all the places where I think this can get to. 3 times the leverage, 1/3 the price. And look at this orderly transition from fall to winter, and it failed again right here and went into winter. Look at that warning. Winter, bam. It went from 84 to 58. Crazy. And 6 months from now, it could be at 100. That's the Dow. And if you look at it, was 1.6% today. Guess what it compares favorably to? Where's the Q? The Qs were 0.81. So this thing, it has the volatility and expansion of the Qs, but the smoothness of the diamonds. Are you kidding me? How awesome is that? So, yeah. So anyway, EWZ. This is ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah. So 1, 2. This was nothing more than a pocket. There's an owl here, and so that's a swing trade. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let me see what that big red bar is. That's where I was saying it could get back to, just to get into the noise of all this area. When I was making those trades, it's now made the move that I thought it could make. So now it's really interesting. And guess what it did? It just now went into summer.
Right.
So this is the thing to look for. When you get something that goes fall into winter and then rejects winter right away and crosses back into summer, that's the best thing ever. And that would have given you entries in this area here, in that pocket. And if you can see a double bottom and then a higher low, I mean, holy mackerel. All these lines in here was for me intraday trading that with all my little stops. I just haven't zeroed that shit out. But so that's Brazil. And this one will make you even sicker. Freaking Mexico. And it's still early. And here was the entry back in here. I'm sorry, here. Entry here. And that was after some day trading here. And now this was a low and a higher low. Look at that beauty. And this is on a day. So now you get this entry in here at 40 on a dollar risk, and it's at 45. This was the second position here. So this is, and it's a dollar stop on both of those. So this thing has made 2.5, and this thing has made 5. So that's a 7.5 hour trade off a standard. And look at, this is where it crossed the zero line into summer.
Yeah.
And it's got to get back to fair value here. I need to add this line. It can get back to here without disbelief, right? So now I've got 2 in hand all the way up. I just got to, move my stop up in here to like probably about there. And just treat this as a 2-day low. Heck, I might even go here and say the hell with it. That'd make it an 8R. Or I get to keep 6 out of the 7.5. Right? And then if this thing, and now tomorrow, if this thing takes off, that's what 30-minute bars look like. I mean, Jesus, it's every little pocket and takeoff is an enter. Enter. Yeah. My brother asked me about this one. He caught this one last week. He says, remember that thing you used to like, Cliff? I said, yep, I still love it. He says, oh, good, because he bought it here. He says, did I do that right? I said, yes. Yes, you did. With a stop right here. It's right below the RL10, or the bottom of the belly of the dragon. That's your stop in reverse. So his entry was here on the RLXD. So now any entry in here on the short side, if you took a profit here, you wouldn't be mad, but this would be a pocket. Now I want to show you the one that everybody hates, that nobody likes. GE. Oh, got me out today, but I called this one back here at 768, and it went to 9. So that's $1.30 on 7. That's a 20% move from there to there. Yeah, but it hasn't. All it did was just get back. Yeah, it just got back to here. So you can bet that I'm ready to trade this one again, because if this is a pullback in a pocket, where's this going to go? To here. Probably to this cluster of congestion, and it'll go back and test this support level that failed, and it'll test this the resistance that made it fail further. It's got to get through that. So this thing over, General Electric, are they going to go to 0? No, unless they're GM. But it's a General. That one's headed for 12. Yeah, so you got to ask yourself: is this going to go to 0 before it goes to 12? What happens first? I'll bet 12. But 7 would be my indicator that this thing's probably going to fail. Now, there's a lot of reasons to hate and disrespect. Oh yeah, that's right. So that even, I mean, getting to 12 just gets back to this long period of, that's how bad this was. You can see how bad that was in the winter. Guess when you started getting interested in it? Right here around the spring. It leaves the Red River. That's pretty good. Crosses the 0 line here. Just wait for the 0 line. You're in good shape. That is a nice way to change your expectations and to change the way you look at something that nobody wants to own. Oh, really? Nobody wants to own it? I want to freaking own it. From 770. And then now it's just a matter of managing details. But you can see I've been trading the dog shit out of this thing. Pardon my language. A sign that I'm getting tired. Okay, so we had scheduled some time to talk about some other things. I'm too tired to do that now. So what I want to do is just get this documented, give you stuff to think about, and then schedule another call when you're ready to talk about what we want to talk about. So that
Awesome.
should be enough for now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's 2 pretty good hours.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you made me say it. You made me, because now you made me commit to all that stuff with the spoken word.
Well, we're thankful for all of it, man. Really.
So I got to get my drum and get in the sauna and play. So the one I'm using most of the time, Bill, because it's a sauna, I don't want to damage the drum with the infrared. I don't know if it does or not. But I got this crummy little old Thailand drum. It's called the Klong Yao.
Oh yeah, those are pretty cool. I used to have one of those.
Yeah. You actually played that one once. It's that tall, thin goblet, and with it's only got an 8-inch head.
Yep.
About a 3-foot stem, and then a wide flare at the base, and the bass tone on that thing will just blow you away. But it's a pretty cheap drum, so that's the one that I use in the sauna, because if I lose it, I can get another one. But it's light, and it's tall enough that I can. Anyway, so anyway, I'm gonna get in the sauna and beat the drums for a half an hour or so, and then jump in a hot tub and play with the dogs.
Sounds like
maybe I probably got to do the daily reports first, so we'll get that done. Hey, awesome to be in the same space as you guys and to hear your voice, even though I didn't let you talk much. I had to get that off my chest.
Yeah, that was great, and we all looked at each other as you started going and kind of decided this is one of those situations we just need to shut up and let you go.
There it goes. So here's the deal. My soccer practices are now Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm doing a doctoral seminar like at 9 o'clock or 9:30 on Friday nights. But Mondays and Wednesdays are great, and I can go at 7 o'clock on Fridays very easily. I can't really do I can't go earlier than 8 o'clock your time on any day of the week just because I just got too much stuff at work right now. But I could go Friday at 7 o'clock my time or 8 o'clock your time, or also Monday and Wednesday. I'm going to try to protect your weekend, But if you wanted to do something this weekend, this actually turns out to be a weekend I could do something because we don't have any games this weekend. So, as far as scheduling our next one, I want to try to take advantage of that we're sharing the time. The time zones are favorable for us now.
Sure. How about I think just for Sol and I, Monday would probably be perfect if that is available for you currently. Yeah.
Let's do that other session maybe on Monday, and then I would like to get you to listen to those if you haven't yet, or re-listen to those. The work from December plus this one, and then maybe maybe next Wednesday do a follow-up with question and answer and that kind of stuff. I think that would probably give you enough time to digest. And then we get Bill in on that one too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for Bill to, if you're interested in joining us for the other sessions that we can put together, then then yeah, we've been with regards to the other stuff. Bill's up to scratch.
We call that he's read on. He's been read on. And
he is.
His
I haven't.
clearance is approved.
I've protected the identity of the investor.
Okay. Yeah, that's enough. That's enough for this one. Others, I got to cut it. Well, I'll just trim it through anyway. So let's go ahead, Sonal. You were saying?
So 7 p.m. Your time on Monday, 8 o'clock our time.
Yep, I'll send a re-invite here shortly.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Ken. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
You guys,
that's awesome.
You keep me young. You give me reason to keep going.
You're making us old.
Mission accomplished. I'm trying to steal your youth and enthusiasm, and I'm trading and miserableness. So that's my trade. I'll meet you in the middle.
There you go.
You guys take great care. Miss you.
Right.
Thanks again so much, Ken. Have a good evening in the sauna.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Okay, bye.
Wow.
I haven't stopped recording yet. Hold on. Well, I'm so brain dead right now. It'll take me actually a little bit to figure out how to turn this all off. I'm just gonna cancel it there. Let's see.
I got it on audio. Cool. Okay, let me hit stop on this and see if it could crash.
Well, I'm just gonna.
I got the beach ball.
All right, take care, guys.
Yeah, see ya.